Hi, I'm Andy and welcome back to a Watch Crate video. Today, we're diving into something special, an affordable vintage gem from Seiko, the Grand Seiko reference 5645-7000. This is the first Grand Seiko feature on the channel, so I'm quite excited to showcase it to you guys. This Grand Seiko belongs to the 56GS series. Launched in the early 70s, this line marked the end of Grand Seiko's production before Seiko put the GS brand into hibernation during their golden quartz era. Produced by the Suwa factory, the 56GS series was powered by a chronometer-grade version of the 56 series movement. Originally debuted with Seiko's Lawmatic line in the late 1960s, the movement began as the 3Hz caliber. A year later, an improved 4Hz version was introduced for the King Seiko's 56 series, and after another year of refinement to meet chronometer standards, the highest grade version of the 56 caliber became the heart of the 56 Grand Seiko series. The 56 line offers various case shapes and complications. This particular model, with its date window, is one of the most common. Other variations include models without a date, those with a day-date function, and even 18K gold versions. Back in the 1970s, stainless steel versions of this watch retail for around 40,000 to 50,000 yen, which translate to about 135,000 to 165,000 yen today. In the current market, you can find these watches for well under 1,000 US dollars, with some deals going for as low as 500 US dollars. However, the 18K gold models are far more sought after and command a significant premium. If you're hunting for one, try auction sites, watch trading platforms, and vintage watch forums. For the best deals, Yahoo Auction Japan is a great place to start. Now, let's get into the dimensions and specs. For the diameter, I measured it to be 36mm, excluding the crown. Thickness-wise, the watch is just over 10mm thick, excluding the medallion. If we include a medallion, it's about 11.5mm thick. One thing to note is that the crystal on this watch is an aftermarket part and is slightly thicker than the original one. As for the lugs, we have a lug width of 18mm, a very common size for vintage watches. The lug-to-lug measures to be about 41.5mm. For the watch glass, this watch is equipped with an acrylic crystal, and as mentioned before, this one is an aftermarket part. While this particular model features an acrylic crystal, keep in mind that there are other 56GS models that come with a hardlex crystal. The water resistance was originally rated at 30 meters, but as a vintage piece, it's best to consider it closer to zero. Small splashes of water are fine, but avoid full submersion. Weighing in at just 44 grams with a strap is quite light compared to modern watches. For the movement, this watch is running with the Seiko 5645 caliber. The 5645 is a high-grade movement developed and produced by the Suwa factory and is part of the 56 series of movement. It has a beat rate of 28,800 beats per hour or 4 Hz, which was considered a high beat rate back in the days. The movement is automatic, but it also supports hand winding. It's unlikely you will need to hand wind it though, as the automatic mechanism is quite responsive. Even with an empty tank, the watch will spring back to life after a gentle shake and will recharge as long as you wear it. While we're on the topic of power reserve, I couldn't accurately test it out, but I believe the watch has an advertised reserve of around 40 hours. As for complication, the movement offers hacking and a quick set date. It's very similar to the modern day Seiko. Pull out the crown once to set the date, pull out twice to set the time. There is unfortunately an Achilles heel for this movement. It lies in the gear controlling the day and date setting mechanism. The small gear is made of plastic and is known to wear out and break eventually, thus disabling the ability to change the day and date. Fortunately, there are now aftermarket parts to fix this issue, so it's not a big deal like it was many years ago. Now, in terms of accuracy, the Grand Seiko accuracy standard was -3 to +5 seconds per day, and this beauty here is running at +4 seconds per day, which kinda makes sense since it was last serviced in 2022. Overall, despite being half a century old, it's an impressive movement with all the hallmarks of a modern movement. Next up, let's have a look at the watch exterior and design. For the case, the watch has what many would call a C-shaped case, due to how it looks like two inverted letter C's sitting opposite each other. It's a case shape made famous by the Omega constellation, and was a rather popular case shape back in the late 60s and early 70s. The case itself is brush polished on both the top and sides, but there is a clear divider between the two. In contrast to this fully brushed case, we have a mirror polished bezel with a slightly slanted bevel. For the crown, we have a simple push and pull crown. The crown is nicely recessed and signed with the GS logo. Despite the small size, the crown is quite easy to use once unlocked. And as this is an automatic watch, you rarely ever need to manually wind the watch. Turning over to the back of the case, we have a rather fancy screw-down case back. As with many other vintage Grand Seiko and King Seiko, we have a 14K gold medallion embedded in the middle. Surrounding this medallion is a serial number and a horseshoe marking, consisting of the watch reference number, the case material, and the waterproof text. Later production version of this watch will have a water-resistant text instead of waterproof. Overall, the case design is quite simple, but very well executed. In terms of straps and bracelet, I don't believe this watch ever had an equivalent steel bracelet. Instead, it came on a leather strap with a Grand Seiko buckle. This leather strap is just a cheap one that came with the watch when I bought it. Now let us have a look at the watch dial. This being a vintage watch, we have a pretty simple white dial. While there's no fancy or intricate texture like a modern Grand Seiko, the base of the dial does have a slight sunburst effect to it. For the hour markers, we have a set of thin apply indices. If we look closer, we can see that the top of the index isn't completely flat, and actually has a couple of facets starting from the center. Depending on the light, the indices can look very shiny or like muted black bars. Below the 12 o'clock, we have an Apply Seiko logo along with the automatic text. Above the 6 o'clock, we have an Apply GS logo along with a black printed high beat text and the Suwa Cyclone logo. At the 3 o'clock position, there is a frame date window. The date wheel has a silverish color instead of the usual white. At the edge of the dial, we have printed black minute markers and the dial reference number at the bottom. As you probably already noticed by now, there is a fair bit of damage and degradation around the edge of the dial, but it doesn't look that bad from afar. For the hands, we have a set of thin baton hands, a short one for the hours and a longer one for the minute, and also a cap needle hand for the seconds. The hands are mirror polished similar to the indices. Overall, the dial is quite simple, but still look quite elegant and very legible. As for the wrist fit, this being a 36mm watch means it is perfect for small wrists like mine. At only around 10mm thick, it is a wonderful dress watch that will have no problem slipping under a shirt's cuff. Combine those factors with the lightweight, makes this watch a joy to wear. Even if you have a larger wrist of say 7 inches and higher, I still think you should have no problem rocking this watch. So to tie everything up, what are my thoughts about this watch? Well, despite being half a century old, the watch has some unique selling points going for it. The first and biggest selling point is obviously the brand name. It's a Grand Seiko. Not only that, the watch comes with a chronometer rated movement with all the standards of a modern quality movement. When compared to modern Seiko movements, it outspecs most entry and mid-range movements. I mean, you can't even get a 4Hz movement in a Seiko for less than 2 grand these days. This brings us to the second selling point for this watch, the price. It is the cheapest mechanical Grand Seiko you can get nowadays. The selling price for these usually starts at below $1,000 and if you can jump through a few hoops and get them directly from Japan, they can go for as low as $500. That's a great bargain for a watch of this caliber if you ask me. As for the cons, the small plastic gear for the day and date mechanism is definitely something to keep in mind, but I reckon the reason why this watch is so affordable is also its biggest con. It's because this watch, in the 56 Grand Seiko series as a whole, is simply the least popular vintage Grand Seiko series. The 56 series unfortunately doesn't have any significant highlights or distinction attached to it like other vintage series. Unlike other vintage Grand Seiko series with an achievement of being the first or being distinct in a certain category, the 56GS was just simply there as a more affordable option to the 61GS. Although I suppose you can consider it's the only vintage Grand Seiko with a 4Hz beat rate. Despite that, I still think that this watch and many other 56 series Grand Seiko offer loads of value for their price, and is certainly a great option for those looking for a Grand Seiko or simply a good vintage dress watch. And that brings us to the end of this video. I'd like to thank you for making it all the way to the end. If you find the video enjoyable or helpful, please help me out by dropping a like and subscribe to the channel for future videos. It's a tiny channel, I would really appreciate it. If you happen to own this particular watch, feel free to share your experience with other fellow watch enthusiasts in the comments below. Questions are welcome as well, and I will try my best to answer them. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.